Our next speaker is going to be doing something quite different because the organizer has very carefully choreographed things so that no two talks are the same. Our next speaker is Kai Whiting, who's come from the University of Lisbon. Let me tell you a story about Kai. It's relevant. So I was in Lisbon in June for a completely unrelated conference. We'd never met. He came, he met me at the airport, he found my hotel, he took me to my hotel, and then he took me out to dinner. So I can personally attest that Kai is the master of the virtues, and so well qualified to talk to us about Stoicism today. But today he's going to talk about something quite different. So Kai's day job at the University of Lisbon is working on sustainability, and he has personal interest in Stoicism, and what he started to do is bring those two things together in some very interesting ways. So he's going to talk to us today about Stoicism and sustainability.
What John should have said was I picked him up via metro. Okay, so I didn't pick him up in a car, and I was worried because he said, "Oh, you're going to pick me up?" And I thought, well, yeah, but I'm going to do it sustainably. So I'm pretty shocked that zest is the number one change, you know? Who would have thought that Tigger would be the image of Stoicism? But then I am wearing a striped shirt and I'm ginger. So maybe Tigger and I have something more in common, and you'll have to tell me if I bounce later. Now you'll see two names here. There's me from Portugal, as you can tell from my accent. And there's Leonidas Konstantikos, and that's not because I have a split personality either. That's because I want to recognize the work that he has done since February on this very topic, Stoicism and sustainability. Quite unusual, right? We've just heard that we usually use Stoicism, and we have used in ancient times, Stoicism for personal endeavors and personal development, how to deal with anger, how to get over death of a loved one, how to envision one's own death, as we've just heard quite vividly today. Stoicism and sustainability. What has sustainability got to do with any of that? And that's what I'm hoping that we can discuss later in the coffee break and into Stoic Week as we look, thankfully, into nature. So in my day job, I'm not a philosopher, but I just want to point out that Leonidas is. And if you see in his hand, what do you see? Can you see there what it is? Is it not clear? No, it's the Floridian Everglades, and he has an alligator in his hands. That is a Stoic, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I have my fair share of alligators in the faculty. If anybody knows how to get a promotion, you know you need claws and teeth, right? But I'm not that Stoic. In my day job, I do a lot of calculations with the team, so we were looking at how Romans used technology to provide for their lighting needs. How many candles? How many lamps? The kind of lamps. Were they bronze? Were they ceramic? The oil they used. How often did they use lighting? What kind of places used lighting? And I didn't make any of that up. Thankfully for us and not for them, we had Herculaneum and Pompeii, and we could literally say how many lamps were in each house and each establishment. We then did a comparison with 1820 Georgian London. It's the same kind of thing. How many candles? Now, we had a candle tax in 1821. It was repealed in 1831. So we actually know how many candles we sold. What kind of oil did we use? Did we use whale oil? Did we use olive oil? How much gas did we put in our street lamps? We still have those gas lamps today. What were those lamps made of? And the interesting thing, although this isn't my graph, is that Romans really valued lighting. And we can tell when we look at sustainable issues, what happened in the past will dictate to a certain extent what happens now and what happens in the future. So Romans have as much lighting as we do when we just arrive at the Industrial Revolution. So I like to know these kind of things because then I really see what the Stoics lived amongst. If you're an archaeologist or a historian and you'd like to know more, I'd love to hear from you. if you'd like to know from me about these kind of things, Josh is going to hand out a sign-up sheet where you just put your email and your name, and the only thing I'm going to send you, because I really don't have time to write annoying emails, is papers that we have published, because otherwise they are stuck behind paywalls. But today, what is sustainable development? Now, a lot of you may not know what that is. A lot of you may be thinking about animals and plants, and the environment is certainly one aspect of sustainable development, but it's only 1/3. We also look at society and economics. And this definition comes from 1987, and it says we should meet our needs without compromising the future's ability to meet their needs, the future generations. If you ask Tony, 1987 was a vintage year. It's not an old definition, right, Tony? The best book, I would say, that we've ever had in Stoicism in modern times. And I think this is really, really important, because we have to occupy the safe space of meeting our needs without compromising future generations. And those future generations are not born in 2050. They are born now in a London hospital today. I'm just going to get a glass of water, better drink. What has that got to do with Stoicism? Everything. Absolutely everything. We can see from the cartoon, there's a greedy-looking gentleman who is taking more of his fair share of the Earth's resources. And he's throwing away casually, he's not even looking at the person, the crumbs to the Sub-Saharan African. Now, this isn't a European versus African thing. We can have a Sub-Saharan African who is just as greedy. But greed is the opposite of self-control, right? And this is a question of injustice, which is the opposite of what? Justice. And if we don't tell this man to stop, we are cowards, and that is the opposite of courage. And if we are not sure how to stop this individual from doing that, then we are in ignorance. So the only way to occupy that safe space is through the virtues, because the opposite is the vices, and that is not sustainable development by definition, because it leaves nothing for future generations born today. And that is challenging, and I think it takes more than philosophy. And that's not because I'm biased, I'm an engineer, happening to do philosophy. I do philosophy because I realize that engineering on its own is not sufficient. I know you're going to say to me, only the virtues are sufficient, but I mean in terms of practice and methodology. The challenges of linking engineering and philosophy are unusual, to say the least. The engineering problem. You have a set number of Lego bricks and a set number of color of them. You have a set number of Lego people, and each of those Lego people have a set number of skills. So I know how many bricks I have, I know what color they are, and I know who's in my team. And I ask, what do you want me to do? I want that Lego bridge. So I would look at that Lego bridge and say, is it the right color? Do I have the right color? Are there the right number of bricks? And do we have the right number of people? And then I make a decision with the team about whether we should build the bridge or not. Philosophy, I found, was a little bit different. You had a number of bricks of a set number of color. So I said, great, I work with this all the time. What do you want me to do? And they said, we want complex answers to difficult questions. In an accent that I'd never heard before, because they really are trained philosophers to speak so well. Really, I'm embarrassed by my accent sometimes when I stand next to them. I say, I'm Portuguese. I say, oh, that's great. Questions. What kind of questions are you looking to answer? Maybe I'll just go and ask my team. And they said, team? Have you not even read the word philosophy? T-E-A-M. Very common letters not found in the word philosophy. I is found in the word philosophy. And we do things really by ourselves. That was my response. What? You do things by yourself? Really? Yeah, we do. Sometimes we work in pairs, but generally we work by ourselves. I took 5 minutes to realize that I couldn't answer the questions by myself. So I rang Leonidas. He'd never heard of me. And I said, I've just read your work in Stoicism today, and I want you. I think you've been really helpful to me. And he said in a kind of Miami accent, okay, great, if I translate it into the Queen's English. And we embarked on a journey, a venture into Stoicism, where we'd have the philosopher asking the question, what should a Stoic eat? And let's say, for sake of argument, it's a beef burger. The engineers in my team were going, how are we going to provide that? How many cows do we need? How many farms do we need? How many bricks to produce those farms do we need? How many roads are we going to build to those farms? And I was sitting on the seesaw in the middle, because it's the safest place to be, and you have, what should we eat and how should we provide it? And I said, what's the effect on the environment? Regardless of what it is that we should eat and how we're going to provide it, surely we should start with, what's the effect on the environment? What should a Stoic learn? So the engineers were saying, how many schools do we need? And how many roads to those schools? And I said, how should we educate for global citizenship? Do we need schools? What should a Stoic buy? The engineer was going, how can we produce this cheaply and efficiently? And I was saying, do we really need sweatshops? Do we really need them? And there is bigger challenges. They were just mine. We have massive challenges today, and we need to come together as engineers and philosophers and historians, archaeologists. Many of you need to come together because I don't have the answers. I don't even have the questions, really. Nationalism. And I'm not talking about loving the Queen, because I love crumpets and I love the Queen. But I am saying that we shouldn't think that we are so important that other people are not worth listening to, which in a Brexit society we are seeing. Regardless of whether Brexit is causing that or not, people are taking it as an excuse to put up barriers. But that's not my problem, right? If I'm the anti-Stoic. Fake news, and we just saw a bit about fake news. It doesn't exist. Too complicated. I'm not even going to research what's true. Mass consumerism, and I'm as guilty as the next one. But I need it. How many times have you said, but I need it, and bought crap you really didn't need? You want to change the world? Stop buying crap. It's that simple. Climate change. Now, I like the answers to these. I will cut my emissions if you will. Ever heard that? Canada? Any Canadians? You've certainly heard that. Biodiversity loss. Now, it doesn't really matter which side of the argument you're on. You can say God made animals for our use, or humans are the pinnacle of evolution. The result is the same, that animals don't matter. They have no intrinsic value in that kind of thinking. Political apathy. And we're all guilty of this. Didn't you see my tweet? I was there, guys. I was in that revolution. I was tweeting. And then I had a cup of tea. I updated my Facebook status. I checked my tweets. I retweeted. And that is politics. Okay, ask Seneca. I'm sure he would agree. The Stoic Response. Now, this isn't just Leonidas and I's vision. This is a vision that I've kind of borrowed, and we've borrowed from all of the Stoics that I've heard from on Facebook with good ideas. Ben over there, we had a really good conversation. So it's not just my vision. It can't be, because I told you, I don't have the answers, and I certainly don't have all the questions. We need to provide Stoic solutions for everyday life, according to nature and to the facts. And I have some philosophers here will say, I lean more towards according to the facts, because Larry Becker's book, and others say I lean more towards nature because I'm a traditional Stoic. Whatever floats your boat, let's save the earth, right? We need to take Stoicism beyond the self. When I choose to buy this t-shirt or shirt, see, I'm not usually wearing a shirt, I'm saying something. I'm saying I'm okay with sweatshops. I'm saying it's okay to abuse people. It's okay to buy certain labels that I know have employed slaves in Brazil. The personal is political. We need to return the philosophy to the Stoa. Stoicism comes from the word stoa, meaning marketplace. Everybody, from the free to the slave, went to the marketplace. It was an exchange of ideas. And it was not an exchange of Western, white, middle-class man ideas. I'm sorry, it was an exchange of ideas throughout the entire region. We're living in a globalized world. It should be the entire globe. We cannot allow white, middle-class men to have all the says. We must exchange ideas. We mustn't hide in our ivory towers and behind paywalls. My commitment is to put as much as I can, all my papers related to Stoicism in open access. That has cost me personally. I just paid $350 this week to allow that to happen. My university paid 1,600 Swiss francs to allow it to happen. And we need to put pressure so that happens more. We need to participate in initiatives that break down social barriers. Do not tell me there is no glass ceiling for women when you are standing on that glass ceiling and it is your shadow that is covering her up. Do not tell me Me Too is a problem. Say, we too believe that it is wrong. We must break down barriers, not put up excuses for inaction. We have to explore on a societal and global level what sustainability really means in the 21st century and how Stoicism can really help us in that endeavor. A theoretical response was to add a circle to the circles of concern, which talks about the obligations we have to other people, at least additionally. And I was like, are we really that obnoxious to not realize that we live on an earth? I can make a dolphin more resilient. I can train a dolphin to jump over hoops. If I take that dolphin for 2 minutes out of water, it will die. If we do not recognize that we have an obligation to the very environment in which we live, we are either very, very confused or very, very stupid. There is no excuse today to say that you are not going to take care of the planet in which you and other people and other animals and plants live. And Harari just said this. I was really pleased when this came out in August because we were saying this stuff in February. And that doesn't mean I'm smart. What it means is that we are all realizing the truth. That we need to flourish globally. Now, some of you might have heard Donald Trump's speech. I encourage you to read or watch New Zealand's speech. Not so many people turned up to her speech, but Jacinda had a point. Why do we not add planet Earth to that list of obligations? For me, there's no excuse. It makes absolutely no sense. It is a plea from ignorance, and ignorance, my friends, is a vice. There are consequences to adding the Earth, and I really have to think about cheese. Why? Because if we believe that we should live according to nature, then what gives us the right to take that away from a cow? The whole milk industry is predated on separating a calf and her mother. So we say that we should live according to nature whilst separating that cow from its mother. Now, I like cheese, but as a Stoic, I've really had to consider it. I've really had to draw a line. How can we eat veal and stamp a cow to the floor so that that morsel of meat that we're going to eat tonight, some of us, because it's on the menu, how can we justify that calf suffering just so we can enjoy one mouthful of meat? Now, what I'm saying is not very friendly, maybe, and you feel maybe a little bit attacked, but I'm saying that if you want to live according to Stoic principles, then you really need to think about it. We need to think about carbon emissions. It is the number one contributor to intensive farming. It is not your car. It is what you eat. You make that choice 3 times a day. You have agency. Use it. We have to think about if we want to stand for cheap fashion. There is no way. People say, I just throw it away. Where is away? Away doesn't exist. Well, away from what? Your close friend's house? The gym that you go to? There is no away. When we buy coffee, and we throw that cup away, what we're saying is that we don't really care about the obligations we have to our water and to our air. We can no longer maintain silence when it comes to animal rights, or I'd like to call obligation towards animals. we cannot deny the reality of global warming. Because although there's not many rules in how to be a Stoic, according to the facts, denial of climate change, I'd question really if you were committed to Stoic principles if you don't check these things out. So, in response to a really common question on one of my favorite Facebook groups, the Stoicism group, is it Stoic to be unsustainable? No, my friends, it is absolutely not. Thank you.